In this video, I'm going to take you through the editing steps in Lightroom Classic to take this unedited raw photo on the left to the final fully edited image on the right. So here's our starting photo. I just happened to look out of the window of the place I was staying early one morning and saw this grey heron stood on the roof of the shed. I think it was eyeing up the fish in the pond in the garden, which had some netting over it, so it's probably trying to work out if it could get to the fish. I actually took this through some double glazed windows, which are quite old and a bit hazy, but it still came out pretty well. I knew that if I tried to open the window, it would probably fly away. And as soon as I got a few shots of it, I tried to, as quietly and carefully as possible, open the window, and it just flew away immediately. And unfortunately, it flew directly away from me, so I didn't even get any decent shots of it in flight, but I'm really happy with this one, so I'm going to work on this today. Okay, so let's start with the crop, and I think I'm going to go 4:5 for this. Just want to crop out this other roof over here, and then bring this in a bit tighter. Keeping the eye pretty much central and in that top third. I'm actually going to use a linear profile to edit this photo with. This will give me as much control over the editing process as possible. And so I'm going to do that to start with. I'm going to bring the highlights down even more already and then start bringing the exposure up. Let's get that all the way up there. I'm going to bring, let's have a think. I'm going to bring the blacks down. Let's get some contrast back in the image. And I might even bring the whites down as well to make sure we're not losing too much information on this really bright part of the heron's neck here. Let's add a bit more contrast to the image just to start with, and I'll probably come back and tweak this towards the end, but just for now, let's just add a basic S-curve just to bring that back to a more pleasing sort of contrast level. So let's go straight in and start with some masking. I'm going to use the subject mask to see what that gets us. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. It's got most of the heron. It's missed the feet, which aren't too important in this image. But it's got this bit of the shed, so I need to get rid of that. And I think it looks like it might miss some of the edges. So I'm just going to tidy that up now. Okay, so I think that's our mask of the heron done now. Before I go any further with that mask, I'm actually going to have a look at reducing the noise in the photo because there's quite a bit. You can see this was at ISO 4000 in fairly low light. So I just want to make a start on this for now, and I will come back and change this later, or I might do it within the masking actually. But for now, let's bring that down. Try and bring some detail back. Okay, now we can look at bringing some details out with that mask of the heron. So let's select that again. And as usual, I'm going to start with a bit of clarity because that has the biggest effect. And then we'll move to texture. Let's try Dehaze. Don't want to go too far with that. We can try that. Let's look at the rest of the heron's body, and then maybe increase the sharpening on here. Yeah, let's try that. I'm wondering if I should do a bit more noise reduction here. Maybe a little bit. I don't want to smooth it out too much and make the heron look too unrealistic, but I think that's a good start. The next step is going to be to create a mask of the eye and make sure that's as sort of bright and bold as possible without being unrealistic. So we'll just get a brush and colour that in. And then just using the curves, I'm just going to make that nice and bright. Maybe use the Dehaze to make that a bit, yeah, that makes the pupil darker, that's good. Just to help that eye really pop. Next I'm going to work on the background. We've got that mask of the heron, so I can just duplicate and invert that, which is really handy. And when you're doing this kind of thing, you want to be careful that you don't make too many drastic changes to either the subject mask or the background mask so that they seem like they're in completely different places. It would be very easy to say, okay, I want to make the background really dark, but then the photo then becomes very unrealistic and looks pretty bad. So you have to keep an eye on making subtle changes, but changes that do help enhance the photo. So I'm going to reduce the contrast in the background so that, and this is helping us focus on the heron more, and then because that's lightened things up slightly, I will bring the exposure down a bit. And I think what I might do now we're on the background layer is reduce this noise even more. Because it's the background, I don't need to worry about excessive noise reduction, making things look too plasticky and weird when I'm trying to sharpen them and add texture. So what we can do is go quite full on with this noise slider here, because this is now only affecting this background and not any of the details on the heron. As you can see, we can keep all of these details and this doesn't affect it at all. Okay, we're on to the last few steps now. I'm going to add a linear gradient at the bottom. That background is very flat and boring, so I'm going to add a linear gradient here. I just want to darken down that very bottom edge, and I'm going to try using the Dehaze. Okay, yeah, and then maybe bring the exposure down a bit as well. Now I'll add a vignette, just very slightly, but I think that's just going to, again, help bring the focus to the heron in the center. So nothing too drastic. Right. Increase the feather, soften that right up, and then, yeah, something like that. I'm going to revisit the tone curve. I want to get a bit more contrast out of that if I can. The image is still looking fairly flat, so I just want to bring the brightness up a bit more, and then we're going to drop the shadows, and this will get rid of some of that hazy effect and give us a bit more contrast. And then the final step is going to be to add a little bit more colour. It's still a bit flat from where we converted it to the linear profile. So I'm just going to use the Vibrance slider. Doesn't need much, just a touch more. So now let's have a look at our before and after.